Hello everybody, welcome back to another reasonable price prediction, the series where we try to figure out where your favorite altcoins could be headed. Today we are looking at THORChain and we'll be comparing the previous bull run to what we're currently experiencing. If you like what you see, please consider subscribing or leaving a like. Getting straight into it, we can see last cycle when THORChain first launched, we had quite strong moves at the beginning. There was no real downtime for Rune. We can see from its first low to its second low, it was a 400% move up, and from the low to the high, THORChain moved up 1,500%. Really strong moves, and note that this happened just before the halving. We had this move before the halving, and although we oscillated quite a while before the halving, we got this strong move. We then, from that high to the previous high, moved up 750%, and from low to low, we moved up 870%. So again, strong moves. Note this took place more or less immediately after the halving, and then finally from the second move up, from the high to the all-time high that Rune put in, we moved up 1700%. Crazy moves. That's from high to high, and then also from the low to the low that came after the all-time high, the first serious correction, we moved up 700%. So really strong moves from Rune this whole time. And this took place from Rune's launch to the high over 95 weeks. And we can see each move from the first move up to the second move up roughly took about 40 weeks. Now, looking at what we've seen, for the last year, more or less, we can see Rune broke out of this long downward trend and made its first move up before the halving of 2024 that was in April. Again, we put in this high here, which in total was a 1300% move. We put this high in back in March 11th. So we can see, first of all, from the low to the high, the moves have been quite similar to begin with. And also quite similarly, if we zoom in from the low to the next low, we can see that was 374%. What did we get last time? 400%. So far, this first move has looked quite promising. Now, in terms of discrepancies, we haven't really been trading sideways as much as we did, say, the first cycle. We can see that we put in a high and then revisited that high, and then revisited that high again before breaking above it. 3 tops before breaking above. Here, you could argue that we've had 3 tops, but they're at different prices. These two, the first and the third, are at similar levels, so maybe we just got an extra push here for whatever reason. Ultimately, we don't know. Also, we can see that we broke out of this kind of support that we were following, so I'm just going to delete that. Something to readjust later on. Also, in terms of the 40 weeks, from seeing this first correction, this first low, from where we moved down from the first high to the first low, we saw that it took 40 weeks for us to make that move to the next level and put in that first low. If we take a look at what we're currently seeing, you can see we put in this first low here on the 22nd of January, and we have until more or less the end of the year, 28th of October, to move up into the next range. And again, note, it was 2021 when Rune really went parabolic, when the bull run actually took place, not only for Rune, but for the rest of the crypto space. And if we take a look at the moves beforehand, what percentage moves from the highs to the lows did Rune make? We can see pre-bull run, it was 15,000%. So you're already laughing if you'd bought Rune at the start, but if you held until the peak of the bull run, you made an additional 6,000%. So note that we had our best moves before the actual bull run. And while Rune did great during the bull run, you could have become a millionaire before 2021. So it could be a similar thing happening now where we get our best moves in 2024 and the bull run takes place in 2025. That could line up similarly because here we had our 2 strong moves by 2021. Here, if we get our second strong move after these 40 weeks, and it does bring us up a similar amount, maybe it brings us up 400% like I've projected here, however far it decides to bring us, if we get that second move before 2025, it very much could be a similar thing where even if we do get an impressive move in 2025, when potentially our bull run could be taking place, it won't be anything compared to what we got beforehand. So in terms of where Rune could go, we're going to have to shrink the graph and really zoom in to see where we could potentially move. I've taken half the measurements from what we got from this first cycle. You can see here we moved up 870%. Here I've drawn one for 420. That would bring Rune to a price of $20, which is more or less its all-time high. We can see Rune didn't go past $21. Maybe it did depending on what exchange you're looking at. But basically $21 is the high this next move would bring us up to that all-time high for Rune. That could potentially happen before the end of the year, and that is the lows, mind you. If we take a look at where the highs might bring us, it would be an $80 Rune. Would be quite crazy, but again, nothing is off the table. Last time from high to high, we did get a 700% move. You might want to consider shrinking this. You can see for this guy, I halved it. If we move up, if we do half it, and we bring it to around 300, or say 350, that would put Rune at a high of $45. I think that's slightly more believable, in my opinion, but that's just me. And again, if you want to assume that this does play out, we move to these highs and we move to this low, and we operate within a range of $50 to $20 for Rune, which I think is much more believable. What we got last bull run was a 1700% move from the high to the high, and then from the low to the low, we got a 700% move. Here you can see I've halved it again, and the low to the low. So this would potentially be the price after the all-time high, which would be sometime in August of 2025. If we're going to go off the same metrics that we did go off last cycle, last bull run, we can see Rune would be at basically just about $100. And the all-time high, if we get the same move, would be 870. But if we cut that in half and say put 900% of a move, which I think is probably maybe more realistic in a bull run for an altcoin like Rune that is now gained such a high market capitalization. Again, from this high to the next high of 900%, you'd be looking at a sub $500 Rune. I think that's a bit crazy, but again, nothing is off the table. Note that from the current price of $4, that is about a 100x move. It's over 100x move. To me, that sounds outlandish, but again, I would be more on the bearish side. If you think that's something that's possible for an altcoin like Rune, that has a market capitalization of over $1 billion. Go for it. Again, if you did 100x the coin, that would bring the market capitalization to over $100 billion. It's actually 1.35 billion, and realistically, this is actually a 120x. So you're actually looking at a market capitalization for Rune of about $162 billion, which puts it around Tether's price, I think. I'm actually not quite sure. I'd have to check that afterwards, but basically you're looking at astronomical levels. It would put Rune as like top 5 cryptos. It's well above BNB currently. It's well above Solana. Solana is $60 billion, so you'd be close to 3 times bigger than Solana. I personally don't see that happening. So maybe we move up to this second range, and that's where we kind of put in our high. That's where we go to. And again, that's a 10x from current prices. However, there is a very possible chance that if we do look at Rune, we do just keep trading down. We can see we've actually moved past below this previous support, and we've put in a close and an open below this level. So it's not far-fetched to say at all that we could see a downward trend, and this would line up more broadly with what I would believe the crypto space is going through, which is a right translated cycle, where again, very quickly I'll explain, every cycle we usually get a major bull run, a major bear run, a small bull run, and a small bear run. This to me looks very much like that small bull run, and potentially now what we're about to see is this small bear run. And everyone seems to have forgotten about this because back in 2021 we had this crazy move, and the last kind of small bull run that we had was 2019, and even then it wasn't that small. In today's terms, you could have considered it a major bull run. So me personally, that's what I think, but again, I would be quite bearish, so it's important for you to understand that bias. Know that that's what I believe, so I'll see things that corroborate that story. Looking at the Bitcoin chart, again, we kind of have 2 scenarios here. You can either compare it to the time-based movement, where before the halving, compare it to the move before the halving, or you compare it to the more similar move, which is where we had this downward trend, basically. And if you measure from high to high, but where we broke out of this range, you can see that lasted for 20 weeks. Both of these moves more or less lasted for around 20 weeks. So they're difficult to differentiate, but of course it kind of depends what theory you believe in. I think that will ultimately dictate which you prefer the comparison of. I personally don't think it's any, but I always think it's important to explore other possibilities, even if you don't believe in them. First of all, you can see that if we are comparing it to this downward trend, we've trended down for much longer. If you also check the percentage moves from high to low, we can see here we dropped 75%. If we go from high to low here, and note that we did just put in a brand new low, so we are continuing to trend lower. We've actually dropped 68%, so the moves down are pretty similar. It looks like we're going to continue to trade down as well, continue trending down. The next support, I would imagine, is where we wicked to here at the 6,000 Satoshi level. If you want to compare it to the halving, say it's time-based, you have to ignore the fact that here we were trending up and currently we've been trending down. You also have to ignore the fact that we broke out of this range much earlier on. We've now been basically trading this way for 30 weeks, 210 days. This is the Bitcoin pair as well, note. But if you do assume that we're going to broadly follow the 4-year cycle, more or less, I'll adjust these graphs back so that they look how they were. You can see that 53 weeks after the halving, we put in our high. 53 weeks after the halving from current date puts us at April of 2025. This is actually quite reasonable as to when we could see a high potentially. But again, this is just based off past performance. There's no reason that THORChain has to play out this way. It's just something that we have to wait and see, potentially on where we could go when the bull run starts. If it starts tomorrow, magically, and we start rocketing up, our next kind of major resistance is a 275% move up, where we see we topped out multiple times and got rejected during the bear run, the kind of last stand that Rune made against its Bitcoin pair. This was the level that we could not break above. So moving above this level is a big deal. And note that level is at 24,500 Satoshis. The all-time high for Rune, which was at basically 50,000 Satoshis, I think will probably come close to reaching, if not reaching, but I doubt we'll move far above. Again, that's 5x outperformance of Bitcoin. If you're kind of expecting Bitcoin to do a 3x from maybe current price to the bull run peak, you're expecting a 15x move from now to the peak for THORChain, which I think is more or less in line with a cryptocurrency that has a market capitalization of over $1 billion. However, what I personally think will probably play out is we'll see a move down to the lows, maybe not to the cycle lows, but note that if we do drop that low, it's only going to be a 50% drop for Rune. If we take a look at what the coin has done over the last few weeks, we can see it's made drops pretty similar to that. We moved down 42% basically this last month. Another move similar to that definitely isn't off the table. I don't think we will drop that low though. Not with THORChain. I think with other coins we will. I think cryptos like Cardano and other kind of weaker performing big blue chip alts, we will see returns to the lows. But for some reason I just have a feeling THORChain will hold up pretty well. Considering how it was one of the first to start rallying, I think that's a sign of strength. But ultimately I could be wrong. Either way, I'm not expecting a bull run this year. I'm expecting a lower low this year. And maybe the bull run starts at the end of this year. I just don't think we're going to see any peaks this year. And you can look at that bullish or bearishly. I'm looking at it bullishly, but it's important that you're aware of my bias and what I think is happening. Anyway, if you liked the video, guys, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike too. That's totally fine. Consider clicking the video up here as Google thinks you'd really like it. Or click on my faces to check out the channel on other THORChain price predictions. Also, check out the Twitter and the Reddit below. And again, thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one. Take care and peace.